Welcome to The Point of View. This is your favorite current affairs show here on ChannelOne television. On The Point of View, we pick the right topics, get the right guests, and ask them relevant questions on issues that matter to you. Well, it's 19 days to election 2024, and our focus is sharply on the election. Tonight, we're talking to the man who heads the team that designed the opposition party's jobs and employment plan in their manifesto. He has some very interesting insights to share about the economy of Ghana, job creation, and election 2024. Stay with us. Welcome back. So tonight on The Point of View, we're speaking to, he's called Augustus Obuodum Tando, but he's known in Ghanaian parlance as GOOSIE TANOH. Welcome to the show. Good evening.
Thank you.
How are you doing?
Good evening, bud. Very well. How are you too?
I'm very well. It's suffering a bit of election fatigue, but and it's not even here. We have 2-3 weeks more to go.
Absolutely.
Yeah, a lot of the surveys show that job creation will be the most important thing people expect. In fact, NCC survey, Afrobarometer, even Info Analytics, jobs always in the top 5. And for 2 of the surveys, jobs is number 1. So for you to be given the responsibility of leading the team with Mohammed's plan for jobs, that's serious.
Well, I mean, the reality is that the crisis in the job sector is a reflection in the overall crisis in the economy.
Okay.
When NDC left power, the job unemployment rate was 8.4%. Today it's 14.7%. Put in figures, it was about 1 million people unemployed in 2016, 2017. Today it's 2.1 million people unemployed. And what you're seeing essentially is that every year about 308,000 people enter the workforce and only about 120,000 are able to get jobs. So each year, you're basically adding to the unemployment figures. And when you actually go deeply into the employment statistics, you'll notice that of the 11.9 million Ghanaians who are employed, 8.2 million of them are in vulnerable employment. That is what we call the working poor. These are people who wake up, get some work to do today, the next day they have no work, there are no working conditions. They have very low productivity levels, low incomes, and so on and so forth. And really what that means is that your productivity generally as a country is very low. And therefore your ability to generate growth, generate the requisite levels of incomes that are able to support real livelihoods are also very limited. And indeed, if you look at the component that is called the those who are not basically looking for work, all right? Within that component of 5.2 million people, 1.3 million of them are classified as NEET. That is not in education, not in employment, and not in training. These are the hardcore unemployed who have completely given up looking for work. So you have a structural crisis and volumes of people coming into the workforce who basically have no work and therefore become a tinderbox for any potential crisis in the economy. And if you look at the age structure, those between 15 and 30 have an unemployment rate of 30%, twice the national average.
Wow.
And within that structure also, you see that within the unemployment structure of 14.7%, 67% of them are women. So you have inequities even within the unemployment sector.
So you said a lot of things.
Yes.
The unemployment is structural, but it's certainly gotten worse in the past 7.5 years.
It has.
You've also said that it's a reflection of the general economic malaise.
Yes.
Do I take it then that whatever you're going to do on the job side has to start with the economy, in terms of repairing the economy? Because the economy is not right, you can't even get jobs.
Not only the economy, you also have to invest and attract investment in the areas that generate jobs.
Okay.
If you look at the movement in the national growth pattern, you'll see that there's a lot of movement in services, all right? Basically banking, insurance, and so on. Those don't create the levels of jobs that absorb the 300,000 people coming into the workforce. If you look at industry, in our system, industry includes oil and gas and mining. These are capital-intensive sectors. So they also don't generate the levels of jobs that, say, manufacturing or agribusiness can do. So beyond stabilizing the economy, bringing down inflation, bringing down food price inflation, stabilizing the exchange rate, and bringing down interest rates, the cost of financing, you have to look at where you're putting your money to generate the requisite levels of jobs and therefore requisite employment, which enlarges your tax base, enlarges your revenue basis, and then also allows you to grow an economy in the way that we have to grow. Because you can't have a situation where employment elasticity in Ghana is 0.29%. What does that mean? For every 1% that the economy grows, we are only able to generate 0.29 jobs. We have to push that elasticity to about 0.5. So for every 1% we grow, we generate 0.5% of jobs, and then we're able to achieve the sustained output and growth that generates income, generates employment, and allows people to thrive.
You do recognize that the highest growth we had in the past decade,
11%.
At the time, the elasticity of employment was also below 0.5.
Yes.
Because the same point you made,
yes.
Oil sector, first oil, lots of big machines.
11.
Yes. So how will you deal with that structure? So you're saying that it's not the source of growth in terms of oil. We don't want growth. We want to know where the growth is coming from.
Ben, let me give you a stark statistics. The economy, GDP has grown from $10 billion to $75 billion. Since 2000. The employment absorption rate of this economy is at 60%. So clearly, we have been growing, but not in the way that generates jobs. And what
put another way, the growth is not coming from labor's contribution.
Exactly.
It's more what capital does with
exactly.
certain kinds of...
Exactly.
Good.
So one of the recommendations of the job committee is that we must look at moving this elasticity beyond the 0.2 to 0.5. Which are the sectors that allow us to do that? Agriculture, agribusiness, manufacturing, particularly pharmaceuticals, fabrication, metals, tourism, education and health are major job creators, by the way. So we've outlined, if you look in the report, those areas that we consider priority that can then generate the jobs.
Can you go over that list again? Agriculture,
agribusiness, pharmaceuticals, as a component of manufacturing, fabrication and metals, tourism, small-scale mining, and education and health.
Those are, so because some are services.
Some are services, definitely.
But definitely agric and manufacturing more.
Yes. But I mean, you have to remember that the service growth that we have seen, whether it's banking or insurance, is predominantly import dependent and doesn't even generate jobs. The software licenses that these banks employ, the license payments that are made are humongous. The same with telecoms, MTN and so on and so forth. Sure, you see some people with the kiosks and so on and so forth, but the net effect...
Over 400,000
yes.
Momo agents.
Exactly.
That's
significant.
Good
Service is significant.
Yes.
But in terms of the charge on foreign exchange, it is even more significant. You understand?
In terms of what the company owner repatriates.
The outflows. It's even more significant. So
you're saying if you want to win, you must focus on agribusiness, manufacturing, pharmaceuticals, and then you also mentioned
metals
and then education. Let's talk about agric. Yeah. The basic theory I know is that when countries become more productive in agric, they employ fewer people in terms of the percentage of people in agric. So the highly productive countries in agric use fewer people to produce more. How are you going to resolve that? That
is true, but the reality of the matter is that even though GDP contribution of agric has fallen to about 20%, it still employs about 33% of the population, of the workforce. That's number one. A lot of the flight from agriculture in terms of labor has been because of the levels of poverty and the movement from rural to urban. That's why you're seeing so many young people in the cities unemployed or doing menial jobs, vulnerable jobs, and so on. So clearly, and one of the important things about agriculture is that not only does it provide you with food security, but achieving full self-sufficiency, the knock-on effect is that it also lowers your import. Because don't forget that we import about $2 billion in food or food-related products. Poultry, $400 million. Rice, almost $300 million. We produced 1.6 million tons of rice last year. Milled is 800,000 tons. We have to import another 800 to 700,000 tons.
Yes.
That's $300 million on your import bill. Vegetable oil, 200 million. But if you're able to develop your agriculture to generate the surpluses that allows you to feed industry, then you're able then to produce, one, jobs, add value, grow, and foreign exchange by exporting, and also reduce your import bill.
Would you say then that
And don't forget that our market is 350 million people in ECOWAS.
it's not even just Ghana?
No, 350 million people in ECOWAS. Half of them are Sahelian.
I was going to go to the policy around cash crops.
Sure.
Some people think that we missed the trick there because it looked like for a long time we're told cocoa is good. If you can do cashew and even do coffee or even whatever share, these, they call them crops that you don't necessarily consume here, but you, and I think the World Bank promoted this. If I hear you clearly, you're saying feed yourself first, add value to what you produce to sell to the other people. So where does that leave cash crops?
But you need cash crops as well. You can't simply say that, well, I'm just doing only this segment of agriculture, because you need cash crops as even part of your value addition strategy. I mean, let's look at the cashew value chain. We export this. We're expected to export about 280,000 tons to 310,000 tons.
Yeah.
Some of it will come from Burkina, some of it from Ivory Coast,
Yeah.
but a lot from Ghana. What is it? What is the supply chain? It comes from Ivory Coast to Port of Tema as raw cashew nuts in shell, RCN. It goes from here to India to Vietnam. They decorticate it, process it. It comes right back through here to the United States or to Europe. So it's going this way, coming back across our shorelines to Europe or to the United States. So clearly, you have a market if you can produce and send it to Europe and to the United States. And that's the reality of our situation.
But you don't have money to buy. The people come and buy it are Indians and Vietnamese who come in droves, pay directly to the farmers. Sometimes the farmers who are supported by local banks don't even sell to the person who gave them the money because the Indian is cash rich. He sells the raw cashew. That's a big problem in the sector, isn't it?
It's a big problem, and that's why you have to have very serious banks to work with and a very serious regulatory regime.
Okay.
Because I can't go to India to farm gates and go and buy a cashew. They won't even license me to do that.
But we allow that here.
Exactly. So you need to, and part of the reason why we allow that here is that the local aggregators are not able to get credit from the banks. So of course, the Indians hire them because they have their network of farmers, and they use them to buy and then send. In fact, it seems the association even tried to prevent Indians from going to the farm gate, but there was no credit for the local people. So the Indians who have support and cheap funds from Singapore and so on and so forth are able to do that. I mean, you're borrowing here at the average lending rate to firms and households today is about 30.5% nominally. If you add all the add-ons, about 36%. The Singaporean guy is borrowing at 3%, 4%.
So he's supposed to offer the farmer a better price.
Yes,
and our people can't offer the farmer that price.
They can't offer that price, and they don't have the liquidity to offer that price. And there's no regulatory regime that restricts them from going to the farm.
So you've mentioned two things, the regulatory environment, but the capital, the financing. So let's deal with finance, because as you said, the economy has to deal with it.
I want to be very realistic.
Yes.
If we don't have a change in the attitude, the mentality, the delivery, the organization of our banking system, we can talk all we like. We're not going anywhere. Because the intermediation of finance is critical to any growth.
Yes.
The price of financing is critical to any growth. Don't forget that we're competing, Bernard. If I want to replace Thai rice with local rice, I have to be competitive. Competitiveness not only means the cost of the product itself, the price at which I borrow money to finance the farm. The price at which a seed farmer borrows money to make the seeds for me to go and buy. The price at which it costs to finance working capital and the whole supply chain from harvest to warehouse to delivery at the ultimate consumer. It's fundamental. And you can't build something on a 36, 40%. And that's the formal sector. Do you know how much people pay?
Per month?
In the informal sector? 10%, 20%. That's 120% per annum.
So what is the NDC's plan to deal with finance?
There are key components of NDC's plan. One, we have to restore those closest to the small holders, small users, SMEs, the microfinance agencies that were helping to propel growth in this economy. But unfortunately, because of regulatory failures, also we had the crisis and the crash. We have to build other levels, like the savings and loans, rebuild them, capitalize them, and allow them to be able to lend money in a way that is sustainable for whoever is the borrower. And then the main banks itself. You see, there's a program called GESL, Ghana Incentive Shared Risk Sharing System for Lending to Agriculture. And this is basically to de-risk lending to agriculture. And it's a credit guarantee system. It's there. But if you look at the aggregate supply of credit to agriculture and exports, which we need badly, it's 5 and 7% of total credit given. So you have the GESL, but no response.
But GESL is new, relatively. I don't think.
Well, it's about 3 or 4 years.
5 years.
It's about 3 or 4 or 5 years. But it must make an impact, because you see.
So it's a good idea, but you don't think we are seeing its effect yet?
No, because the banks are not able to, if you like, overcome their addiction to treasury bills, to government paper, even in spite of the crisis in government paper. And they feel more comfortable doing riskless business. But it's turned out that that riskless business is
so
also
are you
riskless.
saying that for you, NDC, you're going to use policy or law to compel some type of lending? How are you going to change the bank's attitude?
What we want to do is to engage the Bank of Ghana to begin to look at the microeconomy and ways in which the Bank of Ghana can assist in supporting credit to the microeconomy. You can have all the wonderful macro aggregates. They look nice. Target, inflation, 8% plus or minus 2%. Great. Exchange rate stabilization. But if you don't grow the economy, if you don't export, if you don't generate more dollars and have less of a demand for dollars, your city is going to crash. You can say everything you like on the planet. It will crash. So you have to have a system to grow. And one of the key components of growing is finance.
But would that be the Bank of Ghana's job? Or is that not the fiscal authorities? I'm just wondering, because the
Bank of Ghana
has pushed back when you say to them that...
The Bank of Ghana is the controller of credit. Mm-hmm. One of the planks of its policies is restricting credit and therefore restricting demand and therefore restricting price inflation. And what we've said is that we have to retool the way in which Bank of Ghana intervenes in the market.
Okay.
All right? Because one of the mandates of the Bank of Ghana, historically, was not just price stabilization and price stability. It was also full employment.
In the past?
In the past. And most central banks have that mandate. Because if you don't generate employment, you don't generate growth, how in heaven's name are you going to sustain your exchange rate? How in heaven's name are you going to grow sufficiently so your debt becomes a smaller proportion of your GDP? Do you understand? So there's a direct linkage between what the Bank of Ghana does and how this economy grows. And how banks respond to the challenges of the moment in terms of financing those key sectors that will generate the growth, the foreign exchange, that allows for expansion and allows to generate enough foreign exchange to pay our debts and also to import to add value.
I understand everything you are saying. My only point is that central banks for the past 20-something years have been doing the same thing in Ghana. What do? They use interest rates to try and control everything. So they either raise or lower. That's basically inflation targeting, which we know has not worked. So I want to be clear. Are you going to stop
if you go to the IMF 17 times?
Let me just be clear.
If you go to the IMF 17 times.
Just hold on.
Yes.
I want to understand something. Are you saying that under an NDC government, the inflation targeting framework will change? Because that is the framework being used to manage the macroeconomy on the monetary side.
We have to dialogue with the Bank of Ghana and eventually with the fund as to how we target inflation. Most inflation in this country is cost push. It is the cost of producing goods and services. I'll give you a classic example. I want to give you a classic example. The yield from soybean produced in Ghana is about 1 to 2 tons per hectare. The yield in other countries is 4, 5, 6 tons per hectare. So the farmer is working with a smaller volume to be able to achieve a certain level of income. If you had a wider yield, that income targeting and the price would go down. Do you understand? So if you're able to finance and develop that capacity, you'll see that your general prices for food and so on will come down. Same for maize, cassava, yam, 8 million tons of yam, 20 million tons of cassava, and so on and so forth. That's number one. If you are able to manage, and let's deal with the fiscal, your financial resources carefully and prudently, then the amount of money government requires to finance itself will lower. And therefore, the choked channel of credit, some will then filter and eventually expand to the private sector. So it's a combination of both fiscal and monetary.
Most of the economists at the BOG you speak to, when you tell them that inflation is supply side or cost push, they'll say to you that that's true, but there's been a commensurate increase in M2 and M2 plus in tandem with the increase in inflation. So they still feel that inflation is very strongly monetary side as well. No, so I'm just trying to get your point.
Bernard, why is it that around this time of year, inflation tends to come down? Because of a harvest. This is
so you think it's an agric thing? It's food,
it's
affordability,
food and the cost.
Of course, food inflation is the driver.
It's a major driver. It's a major driver. Whatever you look at, it's a major driver. So in fact, in the old days, when PNDC wanted to adjust the exchange rate by way of some minor devaluation, they waited for the harvest.
Because the pressure on price is lower.
Exactly.
Then when you did that.
Exactly. You see, so we have to find these correlations in the economy that allows us to target inflation better, that allows the Bank of Ghana to become an activist, as it used to be in development finance, that allows us to grow this economy. For instance, in our proposal, we want to create 1.7 million jobs in 4 years by targeting the sectors that I've mentioned and supporting existing enterprises and startups to generate about 880,000 jobs and then knock on about additional 700,000 jobs. To do that, we want to create a fund that will combine the skills, Ghana Skills credit, get support from the Bank of Ghana itself through its development finance window, about $240 million, $40 million from the government budget every year, $160 million, renegotiate the IDA facility for the Ghana Jobs and Skills to about $500 million, $70 million from DBG, and then about $30 million from Exim. This will be used to work in tandem with the financing institutions that already exist, from banks to venture capital funds and so on, private institutional funds and so on, to be able then to target these areas where we know the growth is. And to improve output and generate the requisite exports and import substitution. People say we shouldn't use that. Replacement of imports. That allows us then to deal with the import bill, bring it down. Because Ben, if you have 2 billion and you gradually bring it down to 1 billion, that's 1 billion charge off your foreign exchange. That gives you greater ability and flexibility to manage and stabilize your exchange rate. Correct?
We'll take a short break. We're talking to GOOSIE TANOH, who's the job creation and employment lead for the NDC manifesto. We're trying to understand how the NDC hopes to create jobs and fix the economy. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. This is still The Point of View. My guest is GOOSIE TANOH, who's the lead for NDC on their job and employment creation side. Ghanaian voters in various surveys have said employment or job creation is the most important thing to them. So this is a very big issue. He's trying to explain to us the NDC plan. Couple of points. It seems to me as if this election, people are more interested in the people who present themselves for voting than even the policies, because there hasn't been a lot of policy debate compared to previous elections. So, yeah, you have great ideas. Why should we trust the NDC? You've had the PNDC has been in government for the longest, at least since I became an adult, right? So,
well, it saved this country from becoming a failed state.
Fair enough.
I hope you know that.
No problem.
Okay.
It also took us into a very big ditch that Kufuor has to dig us out of prior to 2000.
Well, not as big as we see now.
So are you seriously saying that the economic crisis we face was much worse than we faced in 99, 2000?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, we didn't have, in those days, what was the debt to GDP ratio? All right, and here you have a situation.
That's what took us to HIPIC, by the way.
Definitely, but there's no more HIPIC at the moment, right?
Yeah.
All you have is G20 framework, OCC, and the Eurobond holders. Okay. The reality of the matter is that whether it's PNDC, NPP, NDC, the problems we have are structural, and people keep saying that, but they refuse to address it. One of the reasons why the 24-hour economy is being promoted and utilized as a benchmark for transformation, is that you have to achieve the efficiencies in this economy that allows you to go and expand your productive output. And the only way you do it is harnessing those resources together from labor and labor improvement, productivity. Ghana has one of the lowest productivity ratios in West Africa. Nigeria is about $7,000 per man output per year. Ghana is 4,700. Senegal is ahead of us. Ivory Coast is ahead of us. The man output for America is $70 per annum, per man hour. Ghana is somewhere in the
$70,000.
$70.
$70.
Yes.
And we are at.
Well, it's about $70,000. Sorry.
That's what I was trying to say.
And then you have the average.
So we are 4,700.
Yeah. And the global is average about 35,000. So
but
we are 6 times below.
If we are not being productive, is it not because your workers don't have the knowledge and the skill?
So one of the components of our program is what we call Aspire 24, to give skills, digital intelligence, upskilling of existing capacities, and also mental attitude towards work, towards the organizational objectives, and so on. One of the interesting things that Ghana has in some respects, particularly for IT, the talent pool. People have come to try and recruit here, but they walk away because they look at the mindset and say, these guys, no. We have to change that paradigm. We have to have a
So some of this is soft and hard.
Exactly.
But what is the 24-hour economy? And how does it address productivity?
The 24-hour economy is harnessing your total productive resources in those areas where you can expand output quickly and achieve the requisite growth and expansion that is required to fuel the growth of the rest of the economy. It's about supply chain efficiency. It's about targeting the sectors that I've mentioned and making sure that those sectors are adequately invested in to generate the requisite output. For instance, if you take, I want to give you a very classic example. Food. Soybean. Soybean is supposed to be called the miracle crop, right? What does soybean do? When you grow soybean, you get oil from it, which is the basis for your vegetable oil industry. You get what they call the cake or the expeller, which is the basis for your poultry feed industry. You get milk from it, which is the basis for substituting for those of us who are lactose intolerant, dairy, and so on and so forth. And you also get a huge market for exporting non-GMO soybean. China imports almost 100 million tons of GMO soybean from the United States. Because the reality is that if you can harness and target these areas, you generate exports, you generate domestic supply of raw materials, and you generate jobs, and generate income, and generate tax. And that's what the 24-hour economy is about, targeting to those sectors that I've mentioned.
So the 24-hour economy doesn't apply to all sectors. It applies to sectors that you believe you have a potential to do what? Well,
I mean, if you're producing full Ghana's capacity now in terms of capacity utilization industry is 65%. All right? Okay? Vietnam is 77. Kenya is in between, 72. If we can move 65% to about 72, of course, people will go on shifts economies. Whoever goes on shift economy is going to require transport when they close from shifts, whether it's shift number 1, 8 hours, shift number 2 or 3. So you impact your transport, you impact security requirements, you impact night markets and so on. It's a multiplier that basically induces and then creates indirect jobs and expands your
But
output.
You do recognize that you need to do a lot of work to even get the average Ghanaian to even, I mean, forget about 24 hours. The guy comes to work at 8 o'clock, he's on Facebook, right? And he's not even clocking in properly, right? So a lot of Ghanaians, when they go to countries that are more structured, they do their 9 hours, 8 hour shifts. Here, you are not even, there's no way of even checking. So my point is, do you not need to do some basic things before you even start talking about extending to 24 hours?
You can do in tandem.
Okay.
You can do in tandem. You know, there's something called boot camp training, all right? You've targeted the sector, you're providing the incentives, you're providing the support, you're providing the resource capability, you're providing the market, you're providing the chain. The key element in all of that is a human being, as you've just described. You must train that human being. Train and retrain and provide constant skills improvement and upgrading. Like everywhere else in the world. If you want to be competitive, you must keep training. And you're not training only the hard skills, you're training the soft skills in here. And that's what the 24-hour economy and the Aspire 24 component of the 24-hour economy aims to do.
And who is going to implement this?
The structure of delivery is one. You're going to have within the presidency a 24-hour secretariat coordinating with the real sector groups like agriculture, like industry, on the targeted areas that we believe we have a comparative advantage, not only to export, but to replace imports and so on and so forth. So you are going to have a coordinated thing between the bureaucracy and also the real sector and the private sector. Don't forget, the main driver is going to be the private sector. What you're doing as a state is you're giving the target, providing the resource capacity, providing assistance in terms of the market, and pushing your banks to be able to lend to those targeted sectors. That's what you want to do. And don't forget, every country on this globe that has succeeded has at some point had to go to a point in time where they state that this is the program for the moment. Americans did the New Deal when there was a crisis. Not so.
Yeah.
The British did the welfare state right after the war, and that's what took them all the way to the 1980s. The Chinese did that with Deng Xiaoping. So it's our time to do that.
You have
24 hours.
You are in the middle of an IMF program that has a year and a half to run.
Yeah.
John Mohammed's term, if he wins, is 4 years. So essentially, the first 1.5 years, a lot of his economic policy options have been locked in already. So he probably has to finish that program before he can start implementing his own ideas. I mean, this will be in the second year of his term.
The advantage of having a John Mahama at this point in crisis is that he has been there before. He knows how to cut through the bureaucracy to make things move. If he didn't know before, now he knows. And what he said is that he's going to hit the ground running with some indication of what he wants to do in the 120-hour situation. But I want to talk to you a little bit because I am a business person. I create jobs, and I create value, and I create output. When I started cassava chips exports to Europe, to the EU, to show you why it is possible, my first export was 500 tons. The next year, it was 3,000 tons. In 2 years, exponential growth. The next year, it was 8,000, 25,000. It is possible if you're organized, if you have a plan, and you have the requisite resource. Even those days, you know how much we're paying for interest? 51%. That was our interest rate that we're operating on.
Late 90s?
Yeah, mid to late 90s. So it is possible. But
you are using somebody's term.
You have to put the ingredients.
You keep saying it is possible.
Yeah, well, it is possible in a constructive and not in a regressive way.
No, I'm just pointing
it is possible
in a... You said that about 5 times.
And I'm saying that it is possible in a constructive and not,
be jumping at
not
that.
a regressive way. Right? I'm just showing you the possibilities of the 24-hour economy and the capacity that it can unleash in terms of productive forces. And the fact that in improving your supply chain efficiencies, in enhancing your value chain, you are basically doing several things. You're saving on imports, and therefore saving foreign exchange. You're promoting exports within the sub-region and externally. You're adding value, and therefore producing manufacturing, and getting more value than your primary products because you've generated the surpluses that allows you to create industry, particularly in the food sector. And you're basically creating employment, decent jobs. In Ghana, only 20% of the Ghanaian workforce is in paid employment.
I like the energy and the gusto with which you are explaining the ideas. Let's hope that the implementation will have the same level of animation.
Well, you know what?
I'll take a break for listeners and viewers to think about that.
I'll tell you about the implementation.
We're still talking to GOOSIE TANOH. He seems pretty clear in his head that 24-hour economy will work. He says it is possible, but in a different direction. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. We're still talking to GOOSIE TANOH, who is the NDC lead on employment and job creation. We spent a lot of time talking about the economy. You talked about microeconomy. Are you going to play any role in this? Because you have the idea, you helped write the manifesto, and the way you are talking, it seems like this thing can happen in 3 years or whatever. So, are you going to accept a role in this government if they win?
I have an aim. I want to prove a point. Exactly the things I've told you. I want to move my company from the crisis level it's at to $100 million a year in 5 years. That's my target.
Your company is in crisis?
Yes. Oh, well, in this economy, you have crisis.
But your company is in crisis. Then we can't give you the economy to manage.
No, then don't give it to me. I don't even want it. I know where I can take my company.
So how can you... But you can't come and tell us all these ideas and remain in the private sector.
No, but
because you led the employment thing, so you can't tell us that they continue working your
Bernard, if you look at the NT, National Employment Trust proposals, they are everything to do with the private sector and pushing the private sector.
So you're going to be in the private sector to help Mahama?
Of course, but every time, let me tell you something about politics. That's the politics of sensible people, not the rubbish politics we're seeing today. If I generate value and employ people and give them an income, people will say, oh, it was during Mahama's time. Not
so he benefits.
Not GOOSIE TANOH's time. It was during Mahama's time that my son got a job also. That is the politics we want to practice.
But you have experience in public sector too.
Yes, I do.
And your mind around this value addition in agric, you can't have these great ideas and then say let somebody else implement them.
Yeah, but I'm a party member, so when it comes to branch meetings and national meetings, I'll make my contribution.
You seem reluctant to go back into active public office.
Because I can see this 350 million people in this market.
You saw these people when you wanted to be president, when you ran for NDC flag bearer.
Yes, I did.
Ago. So you can't come and tell me that I want to continue cassava export.
No, I want to do soybean now.
Whatever.
I want to do cashew now.
You offered yourself for president.
I want to do coffee.
You couldn't have done, no. I mean,
and all these are possible.
Are you saying that even though you have all these great ideas, the best way to help a future President Mahama, if he wins, is to grow the economy from your private sector angle? I mean, that can't be.
What I'm trying to tell you is that you can do a lot in the private sector. As to the conversation about my role and so on, I think it's premature. We need to get Mahama across the line. We believe we will. From what we're seeing on the ground, what we're seeing, even though in Ghana, polling tends to be a bit dicey, but when we've seen it even in the American elections. But I think the general trend is towards a Mahama victory.
So how confident is the NDC?
Reasonably, rationally confident. And I believe that we'll get there. I have no doubt in my mind. You know, I used to do this a lot. So when I talk, people listen to me. I am almost certain that we are across the line.
But there's a general despondency in our politics
and
politicians.
Yes.
How do you think we can fix that?
I think Mahama has an incredible opportunity. And that opportunity is also to restore legitimacy to governance. And with the parliament, hopefully an NDC majority, that parliament also must work very hard to restore the confidence of Ghanaians in parliamentary democracy and the executive branch. And hopefully the judiciary will learn from that and also begin to legitimize itself in a way that it has lost tremendous credibility in this period. You know, people forget that both local investors and foreign investors, they look at what the judiciary does. They look at what the politicians do. They look at what parliament does. Because every investor wants predictability, wants rational application of laws, wants equal treatment and equal access. If we can offer that, you'll be surprised what Ghana can achieve.
The MPP seems to have moved very left in their social interventions, from free SHS to a lot of the things they've done on the social side. Is there really a difference in policy outlook of the two leading political parties?
Yes, because one of the NDC's constituency is very different. It's a working class, middle class, entrepreneurial constituency. And that constituency is what it intends to harness to do the transformation agenda. The NDC's agenda is basically stabilize, recover, grow, and transform. And you need
stabilize, recover,
grow, and transform.
I thought we stabilized.
Since when?
The IMF.
Do you know what is coming?
The IMF said we've stabilized.
Do you know what is coming in 2026?
They said we've even turned the corner.
Yeah,
apparently,
we have not turned any corner.
So your first mandate in the economy will be stabilization?
Stabilization.
But the exchange rate has stabilized. The inflation rate has come down.
The exchange rate one month ago was 15. It's now 17. And they have to enter the market at $200 million to bring it down to 15.97. Yeah, inflation went all the way to 53.6%. It's down now.
So you think we have even stabilized? I thought the next job was recovery. You don't even think we have stabilized?
You need to put the real buffers in to stabilize. You know?
Wow.
Bernard, I mean, you are living with us here. We have been to the IMF 17 times. We had these reports before about how wonderful, how we're about to turn the corner. If you don't address the structural issues, as NDC wants to do.
So let's look beyond what the IMF tells you that you stabilize. So you stabilize, you recover.
Stabilize, grow your economy, grow your food, bring food price inflation down, increase output so you can supply raw materials to your industries that are operating at 65% capacity, generate the jobs, generate the income, mobilize your tax revenue because you have more people working, you have more firms generating profit.
How do you keep cost of power down? Because that also affects industrial output.
One of the suggestions is to create some kind of time of use differentiated tariff.
Interesting.
All right, so that if off peak you pay less.
Interesting.
Very innovative programs.
So that you can have cheap power to use to industrialize.
Yes, because you know our problem as a country. We have the inverse of most industrialized countries. Households pay less than industry, when most industrial countries, households pay more than...
Because industry is using power for productive use.
Exactly.
And yet you punish them in Ghana.
Exactly.
So you want a differential...
Exactly. That allows for especially the big heavies, to have, more competitive power prices that allows them then to lower the cost of production, become more competitive and therefore more profitable, expand output, expand jobs, create revenue, create surpluses to reinvest and expand.
If the NDC loses, what would that mean for the party?
We will not lose, but every party must have the institutional mechanism to regenerate, renew, and grow, and meet new challenges. The world is changing rapidly. What has happened in the United States and in Europe in the last few months? You have a rightward turn, anti-immigration, anti-aid, anti-development support, more tensions between the big powers, China, Russia, and so on and so forth. We have to focus on what we can do within our sub-region. We have to penetrate this sub-region, its markets, its capacity, its opportunity. People say, well, ECOWAS, 350 million people, no purchasing power. The United States started with no purchasing power. But today, look at what they are. And let me tell you, Bernard, the NDC's program is not just a program that basically is limited to just rapid industrialization and so on. Any serious country with the resources that we have, from mining to food capacity, arable land, 70% and so on, we want to become both an agricultural and industrial power in the sub-region. In the same way that Brazil is an agricultural and industrial power and an energy power, we also want to become the same.
Irrespective of the size difference.
Of course, because you're looking at, Singapore has what?
So it's
more reserves than all the West African countries put together.
So it's not about size.
It's not about size.
It's about efficiency and productivity.
It's about organization. It's about leadership. It's about micro. It's about macro that is realistic enough to pull the micro.
Which is why you have to be in public service too.
To be in the private sector, Your Excellency. To be in the private sector.
GOOSIE TANOH is talking very great ideas. He wants to help by growing the private sector.
Bernard, I don't want to use the word "it's possible" again.
No, but why not? Is it not possible?
These are doable.
Okay. So it
requires leadership and organization.
Leadership and organization.
And I think John, if I may use the expression, His Excellency John, has the experience, he has the empathy, and you know what? He has the people to do it. But the most important component of this transformation is the Ghanaian people themselves.
All right.
The ability to understand that what the road ahead is going to be very hard. If there's transparency, there's honest leadership, there's an anti-corruption stance, that's not witch hunting, but real anti-corruption, and the people believe that the leaders are sacrificing as much as they have to sacrifice, there's a way. And we have proved it in our history. There's a way forward and there's a path forward to development and growth.
Time will tell. Thank you for talking to us. Wish you well.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
My name is Bernard, my guest GOOSIE TANOH. Lots of great ideas. May the best man win. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.